The links in the description are for Damar Hamlin's fundraiser, as well as the charity that T. Higgins supported as he's starting to get some negativity online. He supported that with his Cause for the Cleats initiative. Also, again, just a reminder, down below, we lost a content creator, a fellow sports content creator this week, Uche. We're trying to get him to 100,000 subscribers so his family can get the YouTube plaque. So if you have a moment, please go ahead and subscribe, and thank you. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Well, we pretty much did it, folks. Grossi, and today we are going to be breaking down the final week in the regular season, the final week of the 2022-2023 NFL regular season. And I know that things are still very weird, very strange. This is being recorded on a Wednesday when usually predictions come out. Again, all our thoughts are just with Damar Hamlin right now and hoping that he recovers. And hopefully by the time this comes out, there's even more positive news. But as of right now, we're going to kind of just ease back into normalcy a tiny bit, as much as we possibly can, because they are going to be playing football this Saturday, announcing that the Bengals were going to be playing on Sunday against the Ravens at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so with that, let's get into predictions. Last week, I went 10-5 as they suspended the Bengals and Bills game, of course, bringing me to 163-90 on the year. I cannot get 10 more games wrong this year. I want to stay under 100 incorrect. These are the ones that I got wrong last week. You had some big upsets like the Saints over the Eagles. Notice how I got the Packers one right because we all knew the Packers were going to win. But regardless, let's jump into the first game, as this is the last full slate you will see this regular season. Starting off with Saturday's game, you got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs, remember when they had that nice reprieve against the Seattle Seahawks in which the defense took care of business? Their fans didn't have to bite off their fingernails in stress and anxiety. Well, guess what? Those Chiefs are gone now, and returning is the Chiefs that are just going to make you want to pull your hair out because they nearly lost against the Denver Broncos yet again. The Denver Broncos, who are one of the worst teams in the league, really just kind of held their own and went toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs, and their defense looked nothing like it did the previous week. Meanwhile, the Raiders, another surprise there in the AFC West, they went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the NFL as well in the San Francisco 49ers, in which they were able to move the ball against that defense, mostly because of guys like Davante Adams, who made some incredible catches this past week. And the Raiders nearly knocked off the San Francisco 49ers, which I would have loved, but alas, unable to get the job done. Now, this game doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of division. The Chiefs have already won their division. There's no concern about that. However, we still are unsure about the standings, and we're going to be unsure about the standings because I don't know what they're going to do with the Bills-Bengals game. It hasn't been announced as of yet, and so that's kind of up in the air because there is still a number one seed to be claimed. For this game in particular, though, I think you're going to see the Chiefs coming out swinging. The Raiders, we'll see if they put on a show and try to attract Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels. Be like, look at all these fancy play calls I do. I imagine that's what Josh McDaniels is going to do on the sideline.
We're putting the band back together.
But I do pick the Kansas City Chiefs to get the W. The Raiders, they got close last time, almost defeated them. And let's just hope Davante Adams doesn't push a person heading out of the stadium again. Following that, you got Saturday Night Football. You got the Tennessee Titans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans have utterly and totally collapsed this season, in which injuries have torn their team apart. Todd Downing is there, and he's just like, I imagine, just kind of being like worm tongue and whispering in the ear of Mike Vrabel, and it's just bad. It's just bad information.
I would stay still if I were you.
Taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Titans, last week's game against the Cowboys didn't really mean anything for them. They wound up sitting a bunch of their starters. However, this week, Ryan Tannehill not playing. Josh Dobbs is going to be in for the Titans, which means the Jaguars, who just beat the crap out of the Texans, they're going to feast. The Jaguars have been playing really good football, and I know Trevor Lawrence's stats weren't amazing last week, but the defense has been improving. The offense, for the most part, has been pretty darn good, and I think what we're going to see on Saturday is the crowning of a new AFC South champion, and that is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they haven't won it in quite some time. So, congrats, Jaguars. I think you're going to get the dub here and the division win. And I'm excited to see what they can do in the playoffs. Then you have the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Ravens losing on Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lamar Jackson still hasn't practiced. Who knows if he's going to be playing this Sunday? I imagine they're just going to keep him out because why would you even risk it? The playoffs aren't until next week. Give him another week to heal. I think as of recording this is his 31st day out since his injury. Meanwhile, the Bengals, as of course everybody knows, they did not complete their game on Monday Night Football, so there really isn't a ton to talk about there, but it was confirmed by the NFL that this will take the 1 p.m. spot on Sunday. Looking at these two teams, the Ravens, they're barely flapping into the postseason right now, and I imagine you're going to see a backup once again take over as QB. And so because of that, I think you're going to have the Bengals who are going to come out roaring in this game, and they should be able to get the W. Following that, you have an NFC South matchup that could have meant something, but because of the Panthers, it means nothing. You got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Bucs. They were losing. We could have had a three-way race in Week 18 for the South, but no, the Panthers defense were just like, come on in, Tom, no, not a problem. Mike Evans and Tom Brady, they haven't really been on the same track all season. They were on Sunday. Over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns for Mike Evans. And watch this team all of a sudden get really good as we're about to get into the postseason. They clinched their division last week, so Tom Brady's going to be there. And you just know it's going to be a problem. They're likely going to play a team like the Cowboys the first week. They probably have a good shot at beating them. And then who knows what chaos they're going to cause. Meanwhile, the Falcons, yeah, they're not in the playoffs. They kind of lost the Tank Bowl because they won against the Arizona Cardinals last week, so that winds up hurting them a little bit. But the Falcons, I think, overachieved this year. I mean, they got a decent look at Desmond Ridder. They are going to have to make some decisions on what they're going to do with their squad, but their running backs are looking pretty darn good right now. So the Buccaneers are planning to play all of their starters on Sunday. I think they'll be able to get the win here, and let's see what they do in the playoffs. Please God, nothing. Following that, you got the New England Patriots taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Patriots keeping their playoff hopes alive, so much so that they control their destiny right now. They win and they are into the playoffs this week. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills, what can you say right now? They haven't made any changes or announcements right now. Maybe they wind up moving this game to Monday, depending on Damar Hamlin. I don't know, because again, we are just kind of like in unprecedented times, because right now this is just not a situation that the NFL has been used to or has had to deal with. So this game, there's a lot on the line for the New England Patriots, and for the Bills, as I mentioned with the seeding, I mean, they're still contending for a number 1 spot. I think if this game is played on Sunday, the Bills playing at home, their last regular season game, the show of support is going to be incredible. That stadium is going to be very loud against a division rival. So I see the Buffalo Bills winning this game. And the Patriots, I mean, at least your offense didn't look like total garbage the past couple weeks. Then you have an NFC North battle. You got the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Bears. Both these teams getting their butts kicked by other NFC North opponents last week. You have the Vikings getting demolished by the Green Bay Packers. And you also have the Chicago Bears being demolished by the Detroit Lions. That does nothing for me. The Vikings, listen, they won the division. Are they frauds? Yeah, there's definitely some fraudulent things. Besides the Packers' conspiracy theory of just making the middle of the field really, really wet, and it only affects the Vikings. The Vikings, well, I mean, oh God, they're going to Soldier Field. That field's not so great either. Be careful. It might be wet there too. Meanwhile, the Bears, they are not starting Justin Fields. Instead, you're going to get Nathan Peterman, and yeah, we all know how this is going to go. The Minnesota Vikings should be able to bounce back against this Bears team and reclaim some of their dignity, but hopefully they'll just be knocked out in the wild card round. Vikings win. Following that, you have an AFC South matchup. You got the Texans versus the Colts. Oh, what a game this is going to be. The Texans, who have actually been playing pretty darn well the past few weeks, just did not show up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They didn't even score a single touchdown in that game. Meanwhile, the Colts, I had some hope maybe they'd be able to defeat the Giants. They did not. The Giants had their way with them, and the Colts, they're just not a good football team. Right now, the Colts are actually favored to win this game, but there's nothing to me that shows they can win this game. While the Texans are tanking and trying to hold on to that number one spot, I actually see the Texans maybe messing that up and winning here. There's a lot of rumors as to what is going to happen to Lovie Smith at the end of this season, whether he's going to stay with the team in some administrative role, he's going to stay as a head coach, or they're going to fire him. Who knows? I think, honestly, they should hold on to him because this was such a transition year. But either way, I think the Texans actually wind up winning this game, and who knows? Maybe that leaves the number one spot up for grabs. Then you got the New York Jets taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Jets, oh boy, yeah, they had absolutely no offense against the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks pretty much able to take care of business against them. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, yeah, they had Teddy Bridgewater, then they're losing Teddy Bridgewater, and the Dolphins, they're not going to be starting Tua on Sunday, and the Dolphins season right now, it's a bit sad. Besides all the injuries that they've dealt with, it's just really been poor play for the past month and a half. And unfortunately for their fans, this is just another December meltdown. I do have the Jets winning this game because I think their defense is going to be able to pick apart whichever backup is back there for Miami. And so because of that, Jets, you get the win. Doesn't do anything for you, but congrats. Then you have what could have been an amazing game. You got the Carolina Panthers taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Panthers, not doing the world any favors by allowing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to score 20 points in the fourth quarter and blowing that game and potentially keeping Tom Brady out of the playoffs, but no, we're here. Instead, both these teams eliminated from playoff contention last week. The Saints, they had a slim chance to stay alive with a big win over Gardner Minshew and the Philadelphia Eagles. However, that door was shut when the Green Bay Packers won against the Vikings last week. Sorry. And so this game is basically just being played for pride right now. The Panthers, I'm really disappointed in them because they have been playing good football under Steve Wilkes. They've been running the ball well. Their defense is playing well. And then it just all fell apart in the fourth quarter last week. I'm going to pick the Saints to win here just because I think their defense should be able to do enough against the Panthers. And if Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara are rocking, they should be able to win. Following that, you have an AFC North showdown. You got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Browns doing the Packers a favor, beating the Washington Commanders last week, in which, oh God, Deshaun Watson looked terrible in that first half, but then started to do well. I don't care about that, and that doesn't mean I like you now, but thank you for the win. You can go away now. Taking on the Steelers, who are somehow, some way, still in the playoff hunt. And honestly, it is, I think, pretty easy for them to make the playoffs. They need the Patriots to lose, and they're playing against the Bills. And on top of that, they need the Dolphins to lose, who are playing against the Jets. And the Dolphins are not starting Tua. So this definitely could happen. The Steelers, their defense is playing well. Kenny Pickett had the best drive of his career on Sunday night, the game-winning drive against the Baltimore Ravens. The Browns, meh. Nick Chubb is fantastic on that team, but we'll see what kind of shape Deshaun Watson is in this week, because I told you that first half was really, really ugly. I'm going to pick the Steelers here to punch their ticket. About a month and a half ago, I predicted the Steelers could make the playoffs, and while it hasn't been the most orthodox, right now, they have a chance to do just that. And maybe, just maybe, still go Chapeau. Then you got the LA Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos. The Chargers took care of business in SoFi, slapping the crap out of the defending Super Bowl champs, the LA Rams. And yeah, they just took no prisoners there. Austin Eckler was an absolute monster. Meanwhile, the Broncos putting on a pretty darn good showing. They're going to be looking to see who their next head coach is, and they just cannot wait for this season to be over. The Broncos, just one of the most disappointing teams this season because they were expected to be really, really good. Lots of questions about Russell Wilson, their head coach, player turnover, what have you. There's lots of questions swirling, and those will all be answered soon enough. But their last game being played at Mile High, this game came down to the wire the last time they played because of a muffed punt. I am going to pick the Chargers to win just because they are the better team. They are in the playoffs, so they don't have a ton to play for, but they're going to want a nice tune-up before whoever they play in the wild card. So Chargers, get the dub. Then you have an NFC East showdown, which actually has some stakes here. You got the New York Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. If the Philadelphia Eagles won last week against the Saints, this game would mean absolutely nothing because the Giants, they were able to get the win over the Colts last week. They are heading into the postseason. Brian Daboll, definitely near the top of the list, or should be, for Coach of the Year. He's taken basically this team that didn't have a ton of talent on it and has made them a lot better, and they're well coached. And even with no wide receivers and all these injuries, he's able to do that. That's pretty darn impressive. But they really have nothing to play for right now. They're pretty much locked into the 6th seed. Meanwhile, you take a look at the Eagles. They have a lot to play for. Jalen Hurts should be returning this Sunday after Gardner Minshew's just really bad performance last week against the Saints. They need him, and they need him back right now. And the Eagles, they're still playing for that number 1 overall seed in the NFC. And if they lose, they could fall all the way down to the 5 seed. So there's a lot on the line here. Jalen Hurts, been injured for the past few weeks. I imagine if he does come back, the Giants defense shouldn't give him too many problems and allow Jalen Hurts to get an extra week off because they'll clinch that 1st seed. So because of that, I'm going to pick the Eagles to fly away with this one and retain the bye. Following that, you got the Arizona Cardinals taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Arizona Cardinals just devastated the fact that they lost that game against the Atlanta Falcons. And man, I hope they're okay with the better draft pick they just got. Meanwhile, the 49ers, as I said before, a close game with the Raiders. Brock Purdy looking a little vulnerable. The defense not looking as good. But listen, the 49ers are still a phenomenal squad. I think they're one of the most dangerous teams in the NFC in a conference where there's just so much meh going on. The 49ers should be able to win this. They are still in contention for the number 1 overall seed if the Eagles lose. I don't see the Cardinals pulling off a miracle here, considering they are playing backup upon backup upon backup. So yeah, 49ers should be able to win this one easily. Then you have another game with a lot of playoff implications. You got the LA Rams, and don't worry, no, that's not for them. They're the worst defending Super Bowl champs in history. And that's not just my opinion, that's data. Taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams, yeah, they got their ass kicked by the Chargers last week, and they're just not good. Meanwhile, the Seattle Seahawks, they're keeping their playoff hopes alive. If they win this game, they will just then have to root for the Lions to beat the Packers. And if that does happen, they will make the postseason. The Seahawks, they have had a really nice season. I know they've hit some really big bumps in the road. Their defense started collapsing a bit. They couldn't get the run game going. But as I said before, the NFC is so inconsistent. Anything can happen here. And the Seahawks, I think they're going to do enough to win this game. I just don't believe in the Rams at all right now. They're just not a good football team. They have a ton of injuries as well. So because of that, it's being played in Seattle. Hawks win. Then you got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Washington Commanders. The Cowboys getting away with a win against the Tennessee Titans on Thursday Night Football. They're also still contending for the number 1 overall seed, and with that, their division. They're going to need the Eagles and 49ers to lose because they have the tiebreaker over the Minnesota Vikings. That's unlikely to happen, or at least both of those things, but hey, they can dream. Meanwhile, the Commanders, hopefully they've realized by now that they are eliminated from the postseason because they lost to the Browns, and on top of that, the Packers won last week. The Commanders did announce that they will be starting Sam Howell at QB, which honestly can't be much worse than Carson Wentz. But I just don't know why they started Carson Wentz and thought that he was their best opportunity to win. But hey, I'm not complaining about it. The Cowboys, they still have some stuff to play for, though by the time this game kicks off, the Cowboys should know where they stand. But I think the Cowboys are just a better team, and because of that, they'll get the W. And finally, the moment everyone has been waiting for, and by everyone I mean me, you got the Detroit Lions taking on the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. Flex to Sunday Night Football. Seattle Seahawks fans are complaining. Lions fans are complaining, and I do not care because I get to see the Packers play in prime time. One more time. The Lions could be playing for a playoff spot if the Seattle Seahawks do lose to the Rams. Because, listen, you got that Rams-Lions collusion. You also have the Lions-Vikings collusion. The Lions would be contending for a playoff spot if Seattle loses. If the Seahawks win, then they're just going to try and play spoiler and knock out the Green Bay Packers. You had head coach and head knee biter Dan Campbell come out saying, listen, we're going out there to win. And they beat the crap out of the Bears last week. Meanwhile, the Green Bay mother-loving Packers, oh, they slapped the crap out of the Vikings, and it was a beautiful thing.
Oh, he's got a little gritty. Take that, he says.
Sorry, just traveled back in time for a moment. The Packers are on a 4-game winning streak and have not lost since their matchup against the Eagles back in November. And they have been playing pretty darn well. Their defense has completely shifted. Joe Barry has done a great job finally adjusting to the talent on his team. I am still concerned about the lack of pass rush, but in the past 4 games, they have caused 12 turnovers, which has been just game-changing. They're running the ball well. The young receivers are healthy. We got one of the best return men in Keyshawn Nixon back there. This is going to be a battle. Being played at Lambeau Field, under the lights, this atmosphere is going to be crazy. It was insane last week against the Vikings, and for the Packers, it's win and in. Crazy to think that they were basically out of the playoffs at 4-8. Well, now they are 8-8 and have a chance to get that final playoff spot. I am going to go with the Green Bay Packers here. I think this is going to be a battle. The Lions should put up a much tougher fight than the Minnesota Vikings, but I'm picking the Green Bay Packers to clinch that spot, get into the playoffs, and from there, you never know. Just please, God, don't play the 49ers first. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you think these matchups are going to shake out? Let me know. You guys find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.